What are you doing, step bro? Okay, I think we've all heard this before, and I'm not gonna lie, even though it's like one of the biggest memes in the world, I gotta tell you, I got one crazy story that goes along with it. And trust me, this does get pretty weird. What is going on, you guys? My name is Bubba, and welcome back to another insane story. So this story takes place, funny enough, I want to say back in high school. This was, I think, my grade 9 year, and I remember I was just a basic, typical kid. In grade 9, I won't lie to you, I didn't really do much with myself other than mostly play video games and sometimes talk to girls on Snapchat that I randomly added my school. Obviously, I kind of did this thing where I had unspoken riz. Basically, I wouldn't really flirt with them, give them any attention, and the girls would hate that because most girls at a young age want attention, and basically, I just, give them little bits of attention here and there until they want it so bad, and then they end up doing the devil's tango with me. That's actually one of the main secrets I used to have back when I was a kid of, basically pulling a bunch of girls. But basically, today's story is how I officially heard the words, "What are you doing, step bro?" And trust me, it's actually really funny. Basically, it all starts off, like I said, in grade 9. I remember I had this friend group, and there was one of my friends who had a stepsister. Now, don't get me wrong, having a stepsister is not bad at all, and I think it's just, a normal thing to have nowadays. And like I said earlier, a lot of, parents get divorced and, find new wives, so the chance of getting a stepsister is actually pretty high nowadays. But I remember I was hanging out with a buddy of mine one time, and basically me and him were having a conversation about football. Now, I'm not a big football guy, and especially since I'm Canadian, watching football is, not really that big of a deal. And before I say anything, no, it's not soccer football, it's football, American football. I know, some people in, Europe and stuff all say, "Oh, you watch football?" And they end up saying, soccer, but no, I literally mean American football. And basically, he invited me over to his house because apparently at their house, they were, doing bets on, what football team would win and stuff. I'm not really sure who it was. I think it was, Michigan versus some other place. I don't know. They were basically originally from Michigan, so I think that's the team they were cheering for. But I remember the other half of the family that, was basically, the step side of his family were cheering for the other team. And I remember I found it very odd, and honestly, I found it kind of awkward how, he's explaining this to me. And then he ended up going to the point where he said, "Yeah, so I was, wondering, I don't know if you watch football, but, do you want to come over and, hang out?" Now, the reason he invited me was, one, I'm not gonna lie, out of the entire friend group that I was in with him, I wasn't really close with him specifically, because I always found him a little bit odd, especially him and his family. And on top of that, I won't lie to you, he was just awkward in general with me. But I remember I decided to give him the benefit of the doubt. This is a normal thing I usually do with most humans, just to be kind of nice to them. So I decided to tell him, "Oh, yeah, man, I'll come over, why not?" And then he said, "Oh, okay, sweet, awesome. Okay, come to this address at 7:30. So I remember I ended up getting the address, and he texted me it, and basically from there, I was just kind of weirded out, but decided to go. I remember all the boys were asking me afterwards what he was talking about and stuff, because we ended up kind of dispersing from the friend group to have this conversation. And I basically said he invited me to football, to watch with him. And all my friends kind of found it weird how they weren't invited, but at the same time didn't really care. So I just decided to lay it off the table and just keep going. Anyways, I remember the next day goes along, and basically it was around 6:30. I ended up getting ready, put it on my backpack and all that stuff, and basically decided to head over. Now, I'm gonna tell you guys one little secret about me before we continue the story, and is that I always carry a condom in my wallet. I know it sounds really weird to say, and I probably shouldn't be saying this, but it is one of my secret weapons that I usually keep in my wallet. It's not only good for holding money. I don't know, it's a very common thing that boys do, and honestly, I kind of just got in the habit of it. So going on, I remember I basically got ready, and I ended up going to his place. And when I got there, I remember I knocked on the door, and instantly, and I mean instantly, his older sister that was 2 years older than me ended up opening the door and literally said to me, "Hey, Bubba, I'm happy you made it." Thanks, is what I told her. And then I ended up entering the house, and when I got inside, I saw the entire family sitting down on the couch, eating popcorn and snacks and watching football. Now, you guys are probably wondering, "Bubba, when does the 'what are you doing, step bro' come into the picture?" Well, basically, what ended up happening was, after a while, I was, hanging out with the family, watching football, and to be honest, I don't know, I wasn't really having that much of a good time, to the point where I remember his older sister ended up coming up to me saying, "Hey, Bubba, do you normally watch football? I'm just generally curious." And I ended up telling her, not really, I'm more of a hockey guy," which is true. I rather watch hockey any day. I don't know if that's the Canadian in me, but I'd rather watch a Canucks game than watch a Michigan football game. I don't know, it's not really my thing. But going on, she ended up telling me, "Oh, if you want, we can go upstairs and watch hockey highlights." I remember I looked at her and I'm like, "Sure, I'll watch some hockey highlights." So I remember I ended up going upstairs and went to her room, and when I did, I remember I ended up sitting on her bed watching her giant 75-inch flat screen that she had in her room, which is a major flex, by the way. Seriously, what kind of kid has a TV in his room? And I ended up watching hockey highlights with her. And as we were sitting on the bed, I remember I was basically just on my phone scrolling through Musically at the time, and basically just, watching the highlights and scrolling through stuff. And then out of nowhere, and I mean out of nowhere, she literally ends up kind of getting close to me, to the point where she was like, "Oh almost basically cuddling me. Now, at this point, I found it really weird because this was like, you know, my homie's stepsister. Like, do I really want to do this? Until I realized, they're not really blood related now, are they? So I decided to, you know, wrap my arm around her. One thing led to another. My unspoken riz ended up happening. And basically, yeah, we ended up making out. We ended up making out on the bed. And instantly, as we were making out, I remember her stepbrother, aka my homie, ends up walking into the room saying, "Oh, yo, Bubba, the football game's almost ending. Do you want to like come watch the rest of it?" I ended up saying, nah, man, I'm just gonna finish these highlights real quick and I'll come down. Okay. He found it really odd how I had my arm wrapped around, like, you know, his stepsister, but at the same time, he wasn't really thinking too much of it, which was a good thing, I guess, and ended up leaving. At that point, right as he left and closed the door, I remember this girl ended up literally hopping on top of me. No joke, on top of me, and started making out with me like crazy. And at this point, I knew she wanted to do the devil's tango. So that's what I decided to do. I literally decided to just take everything off and boom, we decided to do the devil's tango. I remember we were doing it for like, I want to say almost 10 minutes, which was basically the hockey highlights that we were watching. And then I remember out of nowhere, and this was so embarrassing because I remember I had like the most panic look on my face, where the door magically opens up super quick and it's literally my homie and he's like, what's going on here? And then that's when I heard it. The iconic line that everyone makes a meme of nowadays. I remember his stepsister, as she's literally on top of me, decides to turn her head and say, "What are you doing, step bro?" I remember when I heard it, I was like kind of like laughing, but at the same time, I was in shock. I didn't know what to do. So then I remember basically she ended up getting up off me, slamming the door on her stepbrother, and basically said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. You know what? Can we just do this another time? Like, here's my number." And ended up grabbing my phone, putting her number in it, and said, I don't know what you're gonna have to deal with, but like, you know, just I'll talk to my stepbrother later. I remember I looked at her really oddly and I'm like, okay. And then afterwards, I remember I ended up getting my clothes. I ended up walking out, and yeah, let's just say I ended up getting yelled at by my homie for like a good 20 minutes. Don't get me wrong, it was a really unbro code thing to do, but at the same time, his stepsister was pretty hot. I don't know. To this day, I don't know if I regret it or I would do it again, but honestly, all I'm gonna say is that they weren't blood related. And hearing the iconic line, "What are you doing, step bro?" always reminds me of this story. Anyways, guys, that's basically it for today's story. Make sure you do leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And like I always say, follow for more embarrassing but yet crazy stories. Peace out, guys.